The fountain at Zenith Academy wasn't just beautiful, it was a weapon. At least, that's what the Creeth twins had turned it into. Every single day, right when the twin suns hit their peak in the purple sky, those four-armed monsters would find Lyra. She'd be sitting in class, or walking through the corridors, or hiding in the library. Didn't matter. They always found her. Lyra was different from most students at the academy. Her skin was almost see-through, with a faint blue shimmer that caught the light. Delicate gills lined her neck, fluttering nervously whenever she breathed. Her people, the Aquan, had only joined the Galactic Council 2 years ago. They were still considered the new kids. The weak ones. The ones nobody cared about. The Creeth twins knew this. They enjoyed it. Grask was the bigger one, standing nearly 8 feet tall with scales like dark armor. His brother Ven was only slightly smaller but meaner, with eyes that gleamed whenever he spotted Lyra trying to hide. Together, they ruled the academy through fear. Their family was rich, powerful, and donated enough credits to the school that the teachers looked the other way. The routine never changed. Grask would grab Lyra with 2 of his massive arms while Ven blocked anyone who might think about helping. Not that anyone ever did. They'd drag her across the courtyard while other students pretended not to notice. Some would turn away. Others would watch with a sick kind of fascination. Then came the fountain. It was supposed to represent peace among the galaxy's species, different colored waters mixing together in harmony. What a joke. For Lyra, it represented something else entirely. Terror. Pain. Humiliation. They'd shove her head under the water and hold her there. Now, you'd think water would be comfortable for someone with gills, right? That's what made it so twisted. They'd learned exactly how to position her so she couldn't breathe properly. Tilted at the wrong angle, her gills couldn't filter oxygen. It was like drowning in slow motion. And they'd count. Out loud. Slowly. 1, 2, 3. The crowd would gather. Always the same faces. Some laughed. Some looked uncomfortable but did nothing. That was almost worse than the laughing. 27, 28, 29. Lyra would struggle, her thin arms flailing uselessly against their iron grip. Her lungs would burn. Panic would claw at her mind. She tried to scream but only bubbles would come out. 45, 46. Right before she'd pass out, they'd yank her up. She'd gasp and cough, water streaming from her gills and mouth. The twins would laugh, that deep rumbling sound that made her bones ache. Then they'd walk away like nothing happened. Every single day. Lyra had tried everything. She'd reported it to teachers who told her to work it out between students. She'd gone to the headmaster who reminded her that the Creeth family's donations funded the new science wing. She'd even tried hiding, but the academy only had so many places, and the twins knew them all. She stopped eating in the cafeteria. Lost weight. Started having nightmares about drowning. Her grades slipped because she couldn't concentrate in class, always watching the door, waiting for them to appear. The worst part? The other students had started treating her like she deserved it somehow. Like being weak made her fair game. Some avoided her, afraid they'd become targets by association. Others whispered behind her back that maybe she should just transfer to a different school. But Lyra's family had sacrificed everything to send her here. Zenith Academy was the most prestigious school in 7-star systems. A degree from here meant opportunities her people had never had before. She couldn't give up, even though every day she wanted to. Then, on a cold morning when the purple leaves were falling from the courtyard trees, everything changed. A new student walked through the academy gates. His name was Jake, and he was human. The first human student Zenith Academy had ever accepted. Earth had just gotten provisional status in the Galactic Council, and nobody really knew much about humans yet. They seemed pretty ordinary, no scales, no extra arms, no natural weapons. Just soft skin and 2 eyes and a kind of compact build. Jake was maybe 5'10", with brown hair and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything. He didn't talk much those first couple days. Just watched. Listened. Learned. On his 3rd day, he was crossing the courtyard when he heard the counting. 33, 34, 35. He stopped and turned toward the fountain. Saw the crowd gathered in that familiar circle. Saw the 2 massive Creeth twins. Saw Lyra's pale arms breaking the water's surface, thrashing weakly. Jake's expression didn't change. He didn't rush forward or yell for them to stop. He just stood there, perfectly still, watching with those dark calculating eyes. When they finally pulled Lyra up and she collapsed on the fountain's edge, coughing and shaking, Jake saw something else too. He saw every single student looking away. Pretending this was normal. Acceptable. His jaw tightened just slightly. Then he turned and walked away. But that night, while other students slept, Jake sat in his room with his data pad glowing in the darkness. He pulled up files on Kreeth physiology, their culture, their weaknesses, everything the Academy database had on them. He was taking notes, planning, because Jake had just decided something. And when a human decides to protect someone, the galaxy was about to learn, they don't stop until the job is done. Jake spent the next week doing something the Kreeth twins didn't expect. He studied them like a science project. Every day at mid-cycle, he'd show up at the courtyard. Always in the same spot, leaning against the wall near the fountain. He'd watch Lyra get dragged over, watch the twins hold her under, watch the crowd do absolutely nothing. And he'd take mental notes. Grask was the leader, the one who made decisions. Ven followed his brother's lead but was quicker to anger. They fed off the crowd's reactions, got bolder when students laughed or cheered. They were performing, not just bullying. This was about power and reputation. The twins noticed Jake pretty quickly. Hard not to, he was the only human in the entire academy, and he never looked away during their daily ritual. "What are you staring at, mammal?" Grask had growled one afternoon. Jake just shrugged. "Learning about your culture. Seems important to you." The answer confused them enough that they left him alone. They figured the human had learned his place. Smart enough to watch, too scared to interfere. Just another coward in the crowd. They had no idea what Jake was really doing. While he watched them, he also started approaching Lyra. Nothing dramatic, he'd just sit down next to her in the library or the cafeteria. At first, she'd flinch and try to move away. Kindness at Zenith Academy always came with a price tag. But Jake never asked for anything. He'd slide over half his lunch without a word. Help her pick up dropped books. Share notes from classes she'd missed while recovering from that day's drowning. "Why are you doing this?" she finally whispered one day, her voice like wind chimes. "They'll come after you too." Jake looked up from his datapad. "Maybe. But where I come from, we don't let people get hurt just because the bullies are bigger." "You can't stop them," Lyra said, her gills fluttering with anxiety. "They're twice your size. 4 times as strong. You'll just get yourself killed. Strength isn't everything." Jake's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "My people figured that out a long time ago." Lyra wanted to believe him, but she'd seen too much cruelty to have hope left. Then came the day that changed everything. It started like always. Mid-cycle bell rang. Students flooded into the courtyard. The Kreeth twins emerged from the combat training hall, laughing about something. They spotted Lyra trying to slip past toward the science building. "There's our little fish," Ven called out, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "We almost thought you'd forgotten about our appointment." Students started gathering immediately. Some pulled out recording devices. The daily drowning had become entertainment. Lyra's legs felt like water, but she couldn't run. Never worked anyway. They always caught her. Grask's massive hand was reaching for her shoulder when a voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "Actually, I was hoping we could talk about changing things up today." Everyone turned. Jake stood between Lyra and the twins, his hands relaxed at his sides. He looked tiny compared to the Kreeth, but his voice was steady and loud enough for the whole courtyard to hear. The crowd went silent. Nobody interrupted the twins. Ever. Grask's eyes narrowed. "Move, human. This doesn't concern your species." "See, that's where you're wrong." Jake took a step forward instead of backing away. "I've been watching you for a week now. Studying your tradition. And I think I understand it. This is about proving strength, right? Dominance." "Obviously," Ven sneered. "Which is why you should walk away while you still can." "But that's just it, I don't think you're actually proving anything." Jake's voice carried across the silent courtyard. "You're picking on someone half your size who can't fight back. Where I come from, we call that being a coward, not being strong." The crowd gasped. Several students actually backed up, expecting the twins to tear Jake apart right there. Grask's scales darkened with rage, but Jake kept talking, his voice calm and clear. "So I have a proposal. A real test of strength." He looked at Lyra, gave her a slight nod, then turned back to the twins. "Let me take her place." The courtyard erupted in whispers. Lyra's eyes went wide. "You hold me under for the same count you usually do with Lyra," Jake continued. "If you can make me quit before the count ends, I'll never interfere again. I'll transfer to a different academy if you want. But if I last longer than your count, you leave Lyra alone. Forever. In front of all these witnesses." Grask stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You're half our size, human. We'll drown you. Then you've got nothing to lose by accepting. Jake spread his arms. Unless you're afraid a human might last longer than you expect. That did it. Questioning a Kreetha's courage in public? Their pride wouldn't allow them to back down, and Jake knew it. He'd researched their culture thoroughly. They valued honor in combat above almost everything. Fine, Grask grumbled. Your funeral, mammal. The crowd pressed closer, recording devices out, everyone wanting to witness this. Nobody had ever challenged the Kreetha twins before. This human had to be insane. Jake pulled off his shirt, revealing lean muscle and the compact build of a persistence hunter. Nothing impressive compared to the twins' armored bulk. He walked to the fountain and paused at the edge. One more thing, he called out. I want everyone recording this. Send it to the Academy Board. To your families. To the Galactic Council if you want. Let's make sure everyone sees what happens here today. Then, before the twins could even reach for him, Jake took a deep breath and submerged himself in the water. The counting began. 1, 2, 3. Grask and Ven moved to the fountain's edge, confused. Their victim was supposed to struggle, to fight. That's what made it fun. But Jake had just gone under on his own. 10, 11, 12. Lyra watched from the crowd, her heart pounding. What was he doing? Humans couldn't hold their breath that long, could they? 25, 26, 27. This was usually when Lyra broke, when panic overrode everything else. But Jake remained perfectly still beneath the water, his body relaxed, his heartbeat slowing. The twins exchanged glances. Something was wrong. 40, 41, 42. The crowd had gone completely silent. Every eye was on the fountain, on the human who wasn't moving, wasn't panicking, wasn't doing anything but wait. And the count kept climbing. The counting continued, and the courtyard had never been this quiet. 63, 64, 65. A full minute had passed. Lyra usually couldn't make it past 90 seconds before the panic became too much, before her body forced her to thrash and fight for air. But Jake remained completely still beneath the water's surface, like he'd simply decided to take a nap down there. Grask leaned over the fountain, his massive scaled face creased with confusion. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The victim was supposed to struggle. Supposed to suffer. That's what made the whole thing work. Should we push him down? Ven muttered to his brother. He's already down, you idiot, Grask hissed back. 90, 91, 92. The crowd started murmuring. Students who'd watched Lyra's torture for months without caring suddenly seemed invested. Recording devices captured every second. This was unprecedented. 2 minutes passed. Jake's body had done something the Kreetha twins didn't understand. It had activated an ancient reflex buried deep in human evolution. His heart rate had dropped. His metabolism had slowed. Blood flow redirected to essential organs. The mammalian diving reflex, something humans shared with whales and seals, kicks in when the face hits cold water. But the twins knew none of this. All they knew was that this wasn't normal. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Grask's pride was starting to crack. He reached down with one massive arm and pressed on Jake's shoulders, trying to trigger panic. Trying to make him fight. Jake didn't move. Didn't struggle. Just stayed there, eyes closed, completely calm. 3 minutes. A Valerian student in the crowd checked her data pad, pulling up information about human biology. Wait, she called out. It says here humans can hold their breath for, no, this can't be right. What? Someone else asked. It says trained humans have been recorded holding their breath for over 20 minutes. The crowd erupted. That had to be wrong. Impossible. What species could do that? 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Ven was getting nervous now. He looked at his brother. Grask, this is getting weird. Maybe we should. Shut up, Grask snapped. He'll break any second. They always break. But Jake wasn't breaking. 4 minutes. Students from different species started comparing notes, pulling up whatever information they could find about humans. Earth was so new to the Galactic Council that most of the database entries were incomplete. But what they found was strange. Unsettling. Humans weren't the strongest species. Weren't the fastest. Didn't have natural weapons or armor. But they had something else, endurance that seemed to defy logic. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Lyra watched in amazement, her gills fluttering rapidly. She'd never lasted more than 90 seconds. Jake had already tripled that and showed no signs of distress. One of the teachers had finally noticed the massive crowd and pushed through to see what was happening. Professor Zenth, an elderly Maruvian with 6 eyes, took one look at the situation and pulled out his communicator to call medical services. 5 minutes. Grask's scales were darkening with anger and something else, uncertainty. This human was making him look weak in front of the entire academy. His reputation, built on fear and dominance, was crumbling with every passing second. He pressed down harder on Jake's shoulders. Nothing. He tried pushing Jake's head at different angles. Still nothing. The human just waited. 5 minutes, 45 seconds. The Valerian student who'd been researching was now reading aloud from her datapad. It says humans evolved as persistence hunters. They'd chase prey across entire continents, running for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies are built for endurance, not power. 6 minutes. That's when Grask made his mistake. Desperate, embarrassed, angry, he shoved Jake down hard and held both sets of arms on his shoulders, trying to force a reaction. And that's when Jake moved. His eyes opened underwater. He looked up at Grask through the rippling surface, and even distorted by the water, his expression was clear, calm, patient, and completely in control. Then he pushed. Not violently. Not with rage. Just a steady, deliberate application of force against Grask's arms. The kind of push that said I could surface whenever I want, but I'm not done proving my point yet. Grask felt it and jerked back, startled. He'd expected weakness. Instead, he'd found something that scared him, strength that came from patience, from the ability to endure past any reasonable limit. 6 minutes, 30 seconds. The medical team arrived, hovering at the fountain's edge with emergency equipment. Professor Zenth ordered them to stand by but didn't intervene. Something important was happening here. Something that went beyond a simple challenge between students. 7 minutes. And then Jake surfaced. Not gasping. Not desperate. He rose from the water like he was getting out of a relaxing bath, water streaming off his shoulders and hair. He took one deep breath, then another, controlled and steady. His chest expanded normally. His color was good. He'd been under for 7 minutes and looked like he could have stayed down for 7 more. The courtyard was dead silent. Jake climbed out of the fountain and stood there, dripping wet, looking smaller than ever next to the massive Creeth twins. But somehow, in that moment, he seemed bigger than both of them combined. 7 minutes, he said quietly, his voice carrying in the absolute silence. That's more than 4 times what you usually make Lyra endure. He turned to address the crowd, water pooling at his feet. You want to know what makes humans different? We didn't evolve to be the strongest. We evolved on a planet where everything was stronger than us. Faster than us. Had bigger teeth, sharper claws, thicker armor. He took another breath, still perfectly calm. So we learned to outlast them. We'd chase prey until it collapsed. We'd track wounded animals for days. We'd pursue and pursue and pursue until everything else gave up. That's what humans do, we endure. Jake looked directly at Grask, then at Ven. You based your whole reputation on making someone suffer for 90 seconds. I just did 7 minutes and I wasn't even trying my hardest. So here's what's going to happen now. He stepped forward, and incredibly, both twins stepped back. You're done with Lyra. Done with anyone else you've been tormenting. Because if I see you drowning someone again, I won't challenge you to another breath-holding contest. His voice dropped, taking on an edge that made several students shiver. I'll make your lives a living hell. Not with violence, I don't need that. I'll just be everywhere you go. Every class. Every meal. Every training session. I'll document every rule you break. Report every violation. Make you famous across the galaxy for all the wrong reasons. Jake's eyes were hard as stone. Humans are persistence hunters. We don't quit. Ever. And you just became my prey. The Creeth twins tried to laugh it off at first. Grask forced out a rumbling chuckle and waved his hand dismissively at Jake's threat. Big words from a small mammal, he said, trying to salvage his reputation in front of the crowd. We'll see how long your courage lasts. But something had changed in the courtyard that day. Students had seen the impossible happen. They'd watched a human, soft, small, supposedly weak, outlast the Academy's most feared bullies by a margin that shouldn't have been possible. The video of Jake's 7-minute submersion spread through the Academy's network within hours. By the next morning, it had reached the Galactic Council's Education Board. By that evening, News outlets across 3 systems were running the story. The Creeth twins expected everything to blow over in a few days. Students had short memories, after all. They'd done terrible things before and gotten away with it. This would be no different. They were wrong. Jake didn't forget. And he didn't forgive. He just started showing up. Everywhere. The twins went to breakfast in the cafeteria. Jake was already there, sitting 3 tables away, eating slowly while watching them with those dark, patient eyes. They went to combat training. Jake was in the observation deck, taking notes on their techniques. They headed to the recreation sphere to blow off steam. Jake was there too, running laps on the track with the steady, unhurried pace of someone who could keep going forever. At first, they ignored him. Then they tried to intimidate him. Grask would walk past Jake's table and knock his food tray off. Jake would just clean it up, get another tray, and sit right back down in the same spot. Ven tried getting in his face, using all 4 arms to box Jake against a wall. "You're starting to annoy me, human." Jake just looked up at him calmly. "Good. That's the point. I could snap you in half right here. Go ahead. There are 12 witnesses and 4 security cameras in this hallway. I've already filed 3 formal complaints about your behavior this week. Academy policy says on the 4th violation, there's a mandatory review board. Your choice." Ven's hands clenched into fists, but he backed off. Because Jake was right, and they both knew it. That's when the twins started to understand what they were dealing with. This wasn't a fight they could win with strength. Jake wasn't challenging them to combat. He was doing something much worse, he was making them irrelevant. Every time they tried to corner another student, Jake would appear. Not fighting, not threatening, just there. Inserting himself between predator and prey with that same calm expression. And the other student would slip away while the twins had to decide whether attacking Jake in front of witnesses was worth the consequences. It usually wasn't. Jake started documenting everything. He'd pull out his data pad and record their movements, their interactions, their violations of academy policy. He noted every time they broke curfew, every unauthorized access to restricted areas, every threat made against another student. And he reported all of it. The academy administration tried to dismiss the complaints at first. The Creeth family's donations still mattered. But Jake didn't stop. He filed reports with the Galactic Council's Education Oversight Committee. He contacted human media outlets and gave interviews about bullying culture at elite academies. He made the twins' behavior a public relations nightmare. 1 week turned into 2. 2 weeks became a month. The twins couldn't shake him. They tried switching up their schedules, but Jake always found them. They tried confronting him in groups, but he'd just stand there, recording everything, turning their intimidation attempts into evidence. They tried complaining to teachers that Jake was harassing them, which resulted in several professors barely suppressing laughter. "You're upset that a student half your size is following you around," Professor Zenth had said, all 6 eyes blinking in amusement. "Perhaps you're developing empathy for how your victims have felt." But Jake didn't just focus on the twins. He started talking to other students, the ones who'd suffered in silence, who'd been too afraid to speak up. A small Brevian named Tick who'd had his projects destroyed weekly. A Valerian girl called Sin who'd been tripped in hallways. A Maruvian exchange student who'd been mocked for his accent. Jake found them all. "Here's what we're going to do," he told them in a quiet meeting in the library. "We're going to document everything. Every incident. Every witness. Every rule violation. And we're going to submit it all together as a collective complaint." "They'll retaliate," Tick whispered nervously. "Let them try," Jake said. "The more they retaliate, the more evidence we have. See, bullies rely on victims staying isolated and quiet. But we're not going to be quiet anymore. And we're definitely not going to be alone." The coalition grew. 10 students became 20. 20 became 40. Jake taught them human strategies. How to document incidents properly. How to support each other. How to stay visible in groups so targeting any one person became harder. How to be persistent, to keep reporting, keep recording, keep pushing back even when it felt like nothing was changing. "Humans aren't the strongest species," he told them during one meeting. "But we learned something important on Earth. Change doesn't happen because of one dramatic moment. It happens because people refuse to stop pushing. Drop by drop, day by day, until the dam finally breaks." The Creeth twins could feel their power eroding. Students stopped moving out of their way in hallways. The laughter at their jokes got quieter. Teachers started watching them more carefully. The constant stream of reports was building a file that even their families' donations couldn't make disappear. They made one last attempt to reassert dominance. One evening, they cornered Jake in a maintenance corridor where there were no cameras. Both twins, all 8 arms, blocking both exits. "This ends now, human," Grask snarled. "One way or another." Jake looked at them calmly. "You're right. It does end. Just not the way you think. We could beat you unconscious right here. No witnesses." "You could try," Jake agreed. "But here's what would happen next. I'd report it. Medical scans would confirm my injuries. My human government would demand an investigation. The Academy would have to choose between protecting you and maintaining their relationship with Earth. And right now, with 40 students ready to testify about your behavior patterns, which way do you think that decision goes?" Ven stepped forward threateningly. "You think you're so smart." "I don't think I'm smart," Jake interrupted. "I think I'm patient. And that's worse for you. Because I'm not going to get tired. I'm not going to get bored. I'm not going to give up and transfer schools. I'm going to be here every single day, making your lives difficult, until you either change your behavior or get expelled." He looked between them. Humans evolved to chase prey across entire continents. We'd follow wounded animals for days, weeks if necessary, until they couldn't run anymore. You know what we called it? Persistence hunting. The prey was always faster, always stronger. But we just kept going. Until they collapsed. Jake's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I'm a persistence hunter. And you're my prey. So ask yourselves, how long can you keep running before you collapse?" The twins didn't attack him. They couldn't articulate why, but something in Jake's absolute certainty made them hesitate. That hesitation was all he needed. Jake walked between them and down the corridor, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind him, the Creeth twins stood frozen, finally understanding what it meant to be hunted by something that would never, ever stop. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, and it happened in the most public way possible. The Creeth twins, desperate and cornered, decided to make one final play for dominance. If they couldn't intimidate Jake quietly, they'd humiliate him publicly. They challenged him to single combat in the Academy's official arena, a formal challenge that couldn't be refused without losing honor. Jake accepted immediately. The arena filled to capacity within hours. Students packed the stands. Teachers took seats in the observation boxes. Even the headmaster attended, recognizing this had become about more than just 2 students settling a dispute. This was about what kind of culture Zenith Academy would tolerate. The Creeth twins entered first, and the crowd roared. Despite everything, they still had supporters, students who respected strength above all else, who saw Jake's methods as cowardly rather than clever. Grask and Ven played to the crowd, flexing their massive arms, roaring challenges that echoed off the arena walls. They looked like what they were, apex predators, built for violence, confident in their superiority. Then Jake walked out. He wore simple training clothes. No armor, no weapons, nothing impressive. He looked small and fragile under the arena lights. Some in the crowd actually laughed. The twins smiled. This was going to be easy. The referee, a neutral Valerian official, explained the rules. Standard combat protocols: fight until submission, incapacitation, or one fighter leaves the arena boundary. Medical teams stood ready. "Are both parties ready?" the referee asked. The twins roared their agreement. Jake just nodded. The signal sounded. And Jake ran. Not away from them, that would mean leaving the arena and forfeiting. He ran laterally, circling the perimeter at a steady, measured pace. The twins charged after him, confident they'd catch him within seconds. They didn't. Jake had studied the arena's layout during his weeks of observation. He knew every obstacle, every elevation change, every corner. He used them all, staying just ahead of the twins, forcing them to chase. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The crowd's laughter started to fade as they realized what was happening. The twins were fast in short bursts, ambush predators built for explosive power. But sustained pursuit? That wasn't their strength. Jake, meanwhile, kept the same steady pace. His breathing was elevated but controlled. He'd run cross-country back on Earth, had trained his whole life in a sport built around outlasting opponents. This was familiar territory. 15 minutes. 20. The twins were starting to slow. Grask's breathing had become labored. Ven was stumbling slightly, his massive legs burning from the unaccustomed exertion. Jake led them up ramps and down again, making them work against gravity. He vaulted over obstacles with the natural agility of a primate, forcing the heavier twins to go around. He varied his pace, speeding up when they got close, slowing when he needed them to waste energy on a final sprint. It was beautiful in its cruelty. Jake wasn't fighting them. He was hunting them. 30 minutes passed. Grask tried one more desperate charge, putting everything into catching the human. He got close enough to swipe at Jake with one massive arm. Jake ducked under it, pivoted, and the twins' own momentum carried him into a wall. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to humiliate. 45 minutes. The crowd had gone completely silent. This wasn't combat in any traditional sense. This was something else, a demonstration of a different kind of superiority. Not strength versus strength, but endurance versus power. And endurance was winning. Ven collapsed first. His legs simply gave out, muscles screaming, lungs burning. He dropped to his knees, then onto his side, chest heaving. Grask lasted another 10 minutes before he too fell, his body unable to continue. Jake finally stopped running. He walked, not jogged, walked, over to where the twins lay gasping on the arena floor. His own breathing was elevated, sweat dripping from his face, but he was still on his feet. Still functional. The arena was so quiet you could hear the medical team's footsteps as they rushed to check on the twins. Jake looked up at the stands, at the hundreds of students watching, at the cameras broadcasting this across the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice was clear and strong. I want everyone to understand something. This wasn't about proving I'm stronger than them. I'm not. They could have snapped me in half in a straight fight. He paused, catching his breath. This was about showing you what humans are. We're not the biggest or the fastest. We don't have armor or claws or venom. When our ancestors walked the plains of Earth, everything was stronger than us. Lions, bears, wolves, all of them could kill a human easily. Jake gestured to the collapsed twins. But we survived anyway. You know how? We learned to outlast. We'd chase prey for hours, days if necessary. We'd track wounded animals across continents. We'd pursue until everything else gave up or collapsed. That's what made us apex predators, not strength, but the refusal to quit. He turned slowly, making eye contact with different sections of the crowd. These two built their reputation on hurting someone who couldn't fight back. They chose Lyra because she was small and afraid and alone. They thought that made them strong. His voice hardened. But strength isn't about who you can hurt. It's about who you protect. It's about standing up when it would be easier to look away. It's about enduring when everything tells you to quit. Jake looked directly at the camera drone hovering nearby, knowing this would be broadcast to every member of the Galactic Council. Humanity just joined your council. We're new, and you don't know much about us yet. So let me tell you what you need to know. We don't forget injustice. We don't ignore cruelty. And when we decide someone needs protecting, we become the most relentless force you'll ever encounter. He gestured to the twins again. I didn't hurt them. Didn't need to. I just made them chase me until they understood what it feels like to be helpless. That's the human way. We don't destroy our enemies. We outlast them. Outwork them. Outlive their cruelty. Medical teams were helping the twins sit up now, giving them oxygen. They looked broken in a way that had nothing to do with physical injury. So here's my message to this academy and every bully watching this, Jake continued. If you prey on the weak, if you torture those who can't defend themselves, humanity will notice. And we'll make it our mission to protect them. Not with violence, we don't need that. We'll just be there. Every day. Every hour. Making your life difficult until you change or quit. He started walking toward the arena exit, then stopped and looked back one more time. Because that's what humans do. We're persistence hunters. And we never, ever stop. The arena exploded into noise as Jake left, some cheering, some arguing, everyone talking at once. The next day, the Kreeth twins were expelled. The evidence Jake and his coalition had gathered was too extensive to ignore. The Academy board had to choose between protecting two bullies and maintaining their reputation across the galaxy. They chose their reputation. Lyra graduated 3 years later with top honors in xenobiology. Jake stood beside her at the ceremony, along with 40 other students who'd found their courage through his example. The fountain in the courtyard still stood as a symbol of unity. But now it meant something different. It was where a human had proven that strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the quietest voice backed by absolute persistence is the loudest message of all. Across the galaxy, other species started learning about humanity. Not just our technology or our diplomacy, but our character. They learned that humans bond fiercely with those we choose to protect. That we remember injustice. That we don't quit. And in academies, workplaces, and communities throughout the Galactic Council, bullies started looking over their shoulders. Because somewhere out there, a human might be watching. And if they decide you're the problem, they'll hunt you with patience that outlasts stars. That's the human way. We endure. We persist. We protect. And we never stop.